brush with greatness that I've ever had was when I was 14 and I fucked all for the Beatles. It was 1966 and they were playing at Cleveland Stadium. And my father had given me tickets for my birthday. I remember they cost $4. And at that time, that was a lot of money to see a concert. And my sister saw Elvis for $2. Anyway, we had pretty good seats. We sat right up front in the dirt, and there they were, the Beatles. They were wearing these tan Nehru jackets, which were really groovy at the time, and I just loved them. But honestly, I didn't really care that much for their music, at least not until afterwards. They were just so gorgeous, especially Paul. I kept thinking he was staring at me through the whole concert. I thought I was going to die. Well, afterwards, my friend Nicole and I were getting our stuff together, and Nicole said she had to go pee. So we were waiting online when this big guy with glasses and an English accent came up to me and said, "How'd you like to meet the Beatles, love?" I just laughed and tried to ignore him, because my father had told me that some guys might try to take advantage of me out here. Then he handed me this card that said NEMS on it. It was a backstage pass. And by this time, Nicole was peeing, and the guy was nudging me, saying, "Come on, love." And I was like, "Well, what about my friend?" And he said, "Never mind her." And he grabbed my arm and pulled me through the crowd. We got in a black Cadillac and drove to their hotel. You know, the Staten on Riverfront? The guy, Malcolm, he didn't say a word to me the whole time in the car. He just kept looking at me as if he were trying to smell something on me. Anyway, we got there and we got out of the car and we walked right past all the cops and all the security guards. I mean, if Nicole could see me, she would have died for George. And then there we were, in the Beatles suite. It was filled with smoke, hot smoke, I later learned, and filthy. There were cigarette butts ground into the carpet, empty Coke bottles, old food, wads of clothes everywhere. But right there, in the middle of it all, were the Beatles. John was sitting in this low chair wearing these dark sunglasses, and this black chick was giving him head. I mean, I was shocked. It was the first time I had ever seen anything like that, and I have to admit, it turned me on. Ringo was on the phone, and his talk was so thick, I could not make out one word that he was saying. George was watching TV, and Paul was walking towards me. Paul was walking towards me. Oh. "Hello, love," he said, and smiled. And I just melted. I mean, it was Paul. There he was. I had never, ever met anyone even remotely famous before, and, well, you know, it was the Beatles. "Well, how old is she then?" John said from across the room, as the black girl wiped her mouth and moved on to George. 17, I lied. I also told them my name was Cindy, which was my sister. "Well, let's go then," Paul said, and he took my hand. We walked into this dark room with a big sloppy bed that smelled like dirty laundry. And he handed me the cigarette he was smoking and asked me if I wanted a toke. And not wanting to be considered a girl, I took it and tried to look sophisticated. think in my head, I knew what was coming, but like I wouldn't let myself go that far. I mean, from that moment on, I was freaking and just trying to deal with this sudden intrusion on my reality. I've thought about it a lot since then, you know. And after all these years, it's almost like it didn't happen. As if it were a dream or something I made up. It happened, all right. Believe me, I know. Paul started in on me right away. He grabbed my breasts and lifted my skirt, and his pants came down, and there it was, Paul McCartney's dick. I only got a short glimpse of it though, because he shoved it in me so fast I didn't have a chance to brace myself. I was still a virgin, of course. It hurt like hell. But Jesus, can you imagine? 30 years later, I can say I lost my virginity to the Beatles. It's like being a part of history. Being fucked by a part of history. When Paul was done, Ringo came in and said something I didn't understand. And then boom, he was on top of me, and he was way bigger than Paul. With Paul it hurt and I got scared. But with Ringo it felt good. I felt like my whole body was coiling up for a sneeze. I didn't know what an orgasm was. And when Ringo was done, George came in and he had bad breath. They all did, really, but George's was the worst. Because they were smokers, you know. That's all I really remember about him. I was afraid of John. He came in and asked me if I was a virgin, and I said no. I wasn't anymore. I mean, I'd already had 3 men. So he climbed on, and he did me too. He was through real fast. And then he asked me how old I was and where did I live. And I told him. I told him all about my house and my parents and my sisters and school and everything, and he just started to cry. I felt like I had said something wrong. And he just cried and cried. And then Paul came in and said something sharp to him, and they both just got up and left. I just lay there until Mal came in, and he pushed me down and he did me too. I didn't like him after that. But you know, it really was a positive experience for me. I mean, if I had been gangbanged by a bunch of hoodlums or Mexicans or something, it would have been different. These were the Beatles. It changed my life. Not really for the better, at least outwardly. Because I had to give away the baby for adoption, of course. I don't regret that. I was only 14. Couldn't have known who the father was. It was Mal. I hope it was Paul. My son would be 33 today. Think about that. I wonder if he listens to the records.